Welcome everyone to our webinar on how to manage your New Zealand franchise network. My name is Fiona Young and I am a senior lawyer in LegalVision's franchising team. I'm joined today by my colleague Ramsha Naz, who is also a lawyer in the franchising team. So before we begin, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. You will receive the recording and the slides in your email, so no need to worry about taking notes. Please feel free to submit your questions in the chat box and we will answer them at the end. There will be a feedback survey after the webinar. If you could please complete the survey to give us your feedback. We want to make sure our topics are relevant and useful for you going forward. For all of our attendees today, you are eligible for a free consultation with our legal team to discuss how we can help your business and legal needs. All you have to do is provide your contact details in the survey at the end of this webinar. So if you've been following along with our New Zealand webinars, last month our colleagues Cameron and Taylor spoke about franchising your business in New Zealand. To continue on from that topic, today we will discuss managing your franchise network. We will go through the following agenda items: franchisee recruitment and why it's important, how to keep your franchisees engaged, putting together your operating procedures and documentation, managing any non-performance by your franchisees, and at the end, we will have a Q&A session, so please feel free to submit any questions and we'll get to them at the end. And now I will talk about franchisee recruitment to get us started. So no matter where you are on your franchising journey, recruitment is a critical part of growing your brand and network. You might just be starting a franchise, perhaps with 1 or 2 franchisees, or you may already have a solid group of franchisees, but are looking to recruit more to grow your network. So why is recruitment important? Well, ultimately, franchisees are the frontline ambassadors of your brand. They embody the values, the culture, the commitment to quality in all of their interactions. So their performance not only reflects on their individual businesses, but also shapes how the public views your brand as a whole. When your franchisees excel, the whole network thrives, which then reinforces the brand's credibility and reputation and drives further growth, a bit like creating a very powerful snowball effect. So if you have an effective recruitment strategy, you can select franchisees who not only have the necessary skills and experience, but also share your brand's values and goals. This is the alignment that you're looking for. So how do you find this alignment? The first step is to articulate who is your ideal franchisee. You should be clear on the type of person who would be suitable for your franchise, keeping in mind that every franchise is different in terms of its offering, its values, the market that it operates in. So the ideal candidate that is right for your franchise system may not be the same as that for another franchise. If you are able to define your ideal candidate, it would help you to better screen your applicants, and then you would avoid wasting time on candidates who are not a good fit. In the early days, it's always exciting when franchisors start receiving inquiries from prospects, but don't make the common mistake of selling a franchise to anyone without considering whether or not they are the right fit. When you are defining your ideal franchisees, you can consider if you require specific industry background or experience, what key traits or skills are essential for success in your particular franchise, what is non-negotiable in terms of your value and culture, what do you require for financial resources and stability. So this one's actually a really interesting one because in our experience, franchisors often overlook this financial aspect in the early days. They might agree to waive financial requirements and even offer initial financing to help set up a franchisee. And although this can sometimes be a really good strategy to set up a franchisee, there are some cases where franchisors realize that in hindsight, perhaps the lack of financial resources should have been a red flag and can potentially lead to issues later down the track. So, excuse me. Ultimately, you want to make sure that you find someone who is not only interested in your business, but also has the right skills, experience, and motivation to run a successful franchise. So once you have a clear candidate profile, you can go ahead with creating an effective franchise offering. Consider what is your unique selling point? What makes your brand different? What is your market presence? How would you describe the power and reputation of your brand? What support and training do you provide? And what is the potential for growth and profitability within your system? One thing to always keep in mind, try not to oversell the opportunity and always set realistic expectations. In our experience, disputes often arise from misunderstandings about expectations, especially in the early days when the franchisor is focused on selling that business opportunity to the franchisee. So there are many ways to market the opportunity to reach prospective franchisees. You may want to ask your existing franchisees to provide referrals. If you have a good relationship with them, then it creates a wonderful opportunity for them to recommend like-minded friends and family. You can use online marketing tools. Your website is a big one. It is often the first point of contact for both customers and franchisees when researching your business. So it is vital to have a website that provides clear information about your business and the products and services you provide. You can use social media, you can use online ads to attract leads. There are opportunities to advertise on popular franchise directories. You can also participate in expos and industry events to network and meet people. There are also many business brokers out there with a franchising background who can assist with recruitment. Say you've done the marketing part and you start receiving inquiries. Always go through a rigorous screening process to make sure that you can filter out those candidates who don't meet your criteria. You want to prioritize quality over quantity. So you want consistency in your network, not just the numbers. Take the time to get to know them, try and get an idea of their personality, their motivations, their working style. It really comes down to very basic questions like, can you work with them? Do you like them as a person? Obviously, do your due diligence, verify their skills, their experience, any references, what financial stability they have. And if possible, you can even have an open day where you get them to come in and trial the business and get some firsthand experience. Now, I know I've given you many steps and tips to consider, but ultimately learning to recruit is also a skill that takes practice. So the more you do it, the more lessons and insights you can gain from the process. It's always interesting for us to hear from our more experienced franchisors how quickly they can assess whether a candidate will be a good fit or recognize potential red flags right at the outset. Once a franchisee is in the network, make sure to provide comprehensive onboarding and training to set them up for success. Don't overlook the quality of that initial training. You will never have a more enthusiastic and receptive franchisee than when they first join the network. So now Ramsha will talk about how to keep your franchisees engaged.
Thanks, Fiona. Keeping franchisees engaged is crucial for the success of a franchise system. The Franchise Association of New Zealand, FANZ, emphasises several best practices for maintaining high levels of franchisee engagement. One way this can be done is through effective communication. Regular, transparent, and open communication between the franchisors and franchisees is essential. Practically, this can be done by conducting regular updates, by distributing newsletters in the franchise network, as well as conducting meetings franchise-wide or one-on-one, and having an open door policy for addressing concerns and suggestions. Ongoing training and development is another effective way to keep franchises engaged. It is very important to provide continuous training and professional development opportunities to franchisees to keep them engaged. Not only does this ensure that the franchisees are up to date with the latest industry trends, operational procedures, and business strategies, but it also allows you as a franchisor to spot any issues that are occurring in the franchise network or any franchises that are particularly struggling with certain aspects. This will allow you to figure out ways to make the system more efficient and one that works with the needs of the franchisees who are the backbone of the franchise network. It's also very important to provide continuous support and resources to franchisees to keep them engaged. Practically, this can include marketing support, operational guidance, and access to a network of other franchisees for peer support, which we have noticed is paramount in ensuring franchisees remain engaged. It is important to foster a collaborative approach and foster a collaborative community in your franchise network. This is an effective engagement strategy and highlights the importance of building a strong, supportive network among franchisees. Practically, this can look like creating opportunities for franchisees to connect, share best practices, and support each other, such as through regular regional meetups or online forums. Also, you can use local success stories to inspire and motivate franchises within the network, which can always drive motivation. It's also very important to provide tailored training and development programs and ongoing support to franchisees to address any new or recurring issues. We highly suggest franchisors are always brainstorming ways to address the needs of their franchisees by way of providing additional training to address any new or recurring challenges franchises may be experiencing. We also suggest employing methods such as workshops, webinars like we're conducting now, and one-on-one coaching to help franchisees stay engaged and excel in their roles. We live in a world that is technology-driven and technology-dependent, so leveraging on technology for engagement is key. Explore and invest in how digital tools and platforms can facilitate better communication and engagement among franchisees. Discuss the use of mobile apps such as WhatsApp, for example, and social media websites such as Facebook by creating a private Facebook group to streamline information sharing and foster a sense of community amongst the franchisees in the network. Technology can also be used to provide feedback from you to the franchisees and vice versa. This can be done through doing regular surveys and feedback loops to help address concerns and adapt strategies and keep franchisees actively involved in the network. We also suggest setting up a direct line which franchisees can use to provide feedback to you as franchisor. We highly believe that when franchisees are put at the forefront in issues that concern them, they are more likely to raise any issues that arise later on in conducting the franchise business. So it's very important to set up these communication methods in order to ensure there is constant communication between franchisor to franchisees and vice versa. As a franchisor, recognizing and rewarding achievements is very important as well. We suggest the implementation of awards, recognition programs, and incentives that acknowledge top performers and in the franchise network, as well as milestones. You can also hold regional award ceremonies or features in franchise news articles, for example. This helps create a sense of pride and motivation within the franchise network. Now, Fiona will talk about operating procedures and documentation.
Thank you, Ramsha. So as part of keeping your franchisees engaged, it is important to develop comprehensive operating procedures and documentation. As we all know, franchising is all about achieving consistent delivery. When you articulate and document your core business processes and systems, you can achieve consistency, efficiency, and quality across all your franchisees. You are able to provide a clear framework for franchisees to follow, which helps maintain brand integrity and customer satisfaction. And because your franchisees know exactly what to do and expect, it helps them keep them engaged in the process and in turn leads to more growth opportunities in the future. When developing your procedures, consider these steps. You would want to identify all the critical processes in your business. So for example, operations, customer service, employee onboarding and policies, marketing activities. You want to detail all of those processes, and you can also include experts such as franchise consultants to assist, and if possible, involve your most successful franchisees to capture their best practices. These steps are most relevant when you are in the early stages of franchising, when you are defining and articulating your processes. However, even if you are a seasoned franchisor who has already implemented these steps, it is worthwhile to revisit them periodically as your system evolves. This ensures that your processes remain relevant and you can update anything that has gone out of date or needs refinement. Excuse me. The operations manual is the document that contains all of the details of your core business processes. Think of the operations manual as the go-to resource for franchisees. If you have a well-drafted manual, it can save you so much time because instead of calling you constantly with questions, franchisees will be able to refer to the manual in the first instance. As part of onboarding, it can be used for franchisee training, and later on, as they start running their business, it becomes a valuable tool for maintaining consistent performance. When you are putting together the operations manual, include an introduction to your brand, your history, perhaps your missions and your values. You want to include all the procedures in a very simple and structured format. As you probably know, the content is mostly non-legal since the franchise agreement is the document which contains the legal terms and conditions. However, there may be sections that have legal or regulatory aspects. So for example, anything regarding, employment contracts, privacy policies, breach and dispute procedures, you would want to make sure these procedures comply with applicable laws. As Ramsha mentioned, there's the FANS Code of Practice and Code of Ethics for members. There's fair trading practices and also unfair contract terms to consider. You may wish to engage a lawyer to help you review those parts of the operations manual just to make sure that you're complying with those laws. To make the manual simple and straightforward for your franchisees, it needs to be visually accessible. Make sure to use lots of flowcharts, lists, tables, diagrams, and checklists. Consider how you can leverage technology to streamline the documentation process. So for example, if you use document management systems, you can easily organize information so your franchisees can retrieve them easily. You can use cloud-based platforms, so everything is in the cloud, and franchisees with multiple locations can easily access the information. You can use e-learning platforms to train your franchisees. If you have interactive training modules, they can go through specific parts of the operations manual so that they not only understand it in theory, but they can apply it in real life. As your franchise grows, you need to remember that your operations manual should be a live document. It is very common in a dispute scenario for us to see a complaint by a franchisee who's relied on a section of the operations manual, which is now outdated. And then now they're alleging that the franchisor hasn't supported them properly because they haven't updated the operations manual. Your processes and documentation should be regularly reviewed to ensure they are accurate and relevant for your franchisees. So this requires continuous improvement. Make sure you share best practices based on your more successful franchisees. Stay flexible and open to adapting procedures based on the feedback and changing market conditions. And you want to recognize and celebrate those franchisees who excel in following their procedures and achieving the high standards. So implementing and enforcing procedures effectively is key to ensuring compliance and consistency across the network. Now, Ramsha will talk about managing non-performance by your franchisees.
Thanks once again, Fiona. Effectively managing and addressing franchisee non-performance is essential to the success of your franchise network. This ensures that franchisees receive the support they need while maintaining the overall health of the franchise network and also keeping franchisees motivated. It is important to identify early warning signs of franchisee non-performance and the root causes of that non-performance. Early detection is key. Discuss strategies for recognizing early indicators of underperformance, such as declining sales, poor customer feedback, or operational inefficiencies. We emphasize the importance of regular performance reviews and data analysis to spot issues before they escalate into something bigger. Conducting a root cause analysis to investigate the underlying causes of non-performance is key. This includes evaluating franchisee management practices, market conditions, and adherence to franchise network standards. Understanding the root causes can lead to more effective implementation of solutions, as well as ensuring that your franchisees know that your US franchisor are aware of the issues that are occurring and you're taking steps actively to address those issues. It also assists you as a franchisor to see whether those issues are occurring internally or from an external source. Market conditions can greatly impact business, as we're all aware of that, being in the business space. So it's very important to conduct that root cause analysis just to ensure exactly where the issues are arising of non-performance. Once the causes of the non-performance have been determined, we suggest you start implementing support and intervention strategies. We suggest developing personalised action plans to address specific performance issues. These plans should include clear goals, timelines, and support mechanisms tailored to the franchisee's unique situation. We also suggest providing various forms of support, such as additional training, operational assistance, or even mentoring. Highlight the importance of maintaining open, clear, and honest communication and providing constructive feedback throughout the intervention process. Franchisees, contrary to popular belief, very much love constructive feedback from franchisors in order to help them improve in how they're conducting the business. So that's always very much welcome, and always create that open communication to provide that constructive feedback. Franchisors should leverage franchisee feedback and collaboration. We stress the importance of involving franchisees in the problem-solving process. We have discussed throughout this webinar the importance of having that open communication. Solicit their feedback to understand their challenges and their perspectives, and use this information to collaboratively develop solutions. Because the problems very much affect franchisees, it's very important that they are part of the solution. Their thoughts, their perspectives, and their opinions are very much considered when coming up with solutions. We encourage fostering this collaborative approach where you as a franchisor work closely with the underperforming franchisees to address issues that are very unique to them in their circumstances. This partnership approach can enhance trust and commitment to the franchise goals. To properly assess the underperformance of franchisees, it is also essential to establish clear performance metrics accountability. We highly emphasize the need for franchisors to establish clear, measurable performance metrics that align with the franchise system's goals. It is important to set realistic and achievable targets that can help franchisees understand and meet the performance expectations. This ties back in with the recruitment of franchisees. It's very important for you to recruit franchisees that are essentially able to meet these performance metrics as well. It can be really difficult to enforce performance metrics if from the outset a franchisee is unable to meet those. Also, make sure your franchise documents clearly state what the expectations for franchisees are. It's very important to highlight these expectations in the franchise agreement or even in the disclosure document. Also, make sure having clearly stated, ensuring that clearly stated performance expectations can literally make all the difference if issues arise in relation to the underperformance of those, because you're able to clearly assess exactly where the underperformance is occurring and then address it accordingly. It's very important also to enforce performance standards consistently in your franchise network. It's important to ensure that there are no, accommodations, unfair accommodations being made for certain franchisees, and the same is not applied to others. Include procedures in your franchise documents which outline ways in which non-performance can be addressed. This can include possible consequences and exit strategies if it is necessary in the various contexts. Ensure that these measures are communicated transparently from the outset of the franchise relationship, because it's very important as a franchisor to maintain fairness and integrity in the franchise network. FANS provides guidelines and resources for managing non-performance in franchising and in your network. Consequences of continued non-performance can include things such as consequences such as penalties, for example, additional fees being incurred by the franchisee to provide continued support, such as additional training. In severe cases, it can also include termination of the franchise agreement. However, in saying that, it's very important to make sure that whatever step that you intend to take is clearly communicated to the franchisee. It can't be a situation of surprising the franchisee with a penalty or an increased fee. You need to be very transparent if that is to occur later down the line by first issuing a warning letter, for example, rather than jumping straight away to issuing them with a penalty or terminating the franchise agreement, unless it's a severe, a breach of the franchise agreement, then that can be warranted. Mediation dispute resolution is obviously something that is also available. If necessary, you can utilize mediation and dispute resolution to address any underperformance or non-performance or severe breaches of the franchise agreement. Fans may offer resources or recommendations for mediation to resolve conflicts between franchisors and franchisees. However, in saying that, it's very important that matters are resolved amicably as much as possible. If it proceeds further beyond mediation and goes to court, that can be very timely, it's very expensive. And obviously as a franchisor, you are managing so many different moving parts. So it's highly, highly desirable for both parties in every aspect to deal with issues and problems amicably. We hope you found the webinar informative. You might also find our free publication, Franchisor Toolkit New Zealand, helpful. You can download this from the Resources tab. We also have an upcoming event that may be of interest to you. It's on building a safety first culture, legal tips for businesses, and it will be held on the 20th of August at 12 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time. You can register per the details on the slide. We're going to answer your questions very shortly, so keep them coming. While you submit them, we'll take a minute to tell you about LegalVision's membership. By becoming a LegalVision member, your business gets unlimited access to our full team of 100+ specialist lawyers for all of your business as usual legal needs. It's like having your own in-house legal counsel for a fraction of the cost. Our team can assist you with unlimited document drafting and reviewing of business contracts, unlimited legal advice consultations, and unlimited domestic trademark registration, and much, much more. To learn more about how membership can help you, you can request a free consultation when the survey appears at the end of this webinar.
Great, thank you, Ramsha. So now we'll answer some of your questions. We've got one of the pre-submitted questions is, what platforms or techniques can be used for gaining more franchises or locations without swamping our current clients with that information? So I think we touched on some of these common ways to market your franchise opportunity. So for example, using online marketing tools, franchise directories, industry events, and business brokers. I think other than advertising on your own website and social media, which will inevitably, have a really broad reach, you should be able to go through all the other channels and identify your audience and advertise on a fairly confidential basis. And depending on, the channel that you go through, say, for example, a business broker who has their own website, it is very unlikely that your current clients would come across that information unless they're specifically looking for it. And I guess this is more of a generalized answer about how confidential you can keep, your advertisements. But if there is something specific about your industry and clients, feel free to leave your details and we can discuss that with you in further detail. Ramsha, did you want to take the next one?
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. We've had a question that's been submitted. It basically states, when starting a lawn care business in a small town, should you focus on growing locally first or advertise in nearby towns and schedule specific days for those areas, or build locally and then start franchising? Very good question. Although it refers to lawn care, this can be applied to other businesses as well. It's very important to first focus locally. Building a strong customer base in your town can establish your reputation and provide steady income before expanding into a franchise. Essentially, what a franchise is, you are licensing the use of your intellectual property, licensing the use of your trademarks for others to essentially operate a business. If you don't have a well-established reputation or, your brand is not a household name, it can be very hard to recruit franchisees and also just be successful as a franchise network. So it's very important from the outset to first focus locally, start in one town, for example, establish that name, establish that reputation, and then you can start advertising in nearby towns, once you've established locally, you've got your systems in place, you've got, exactly how to run your business successfully, then you can start advertising in nearby towns and designate specific days for services to be provided in those towns to efficiently manage time and resources. And then after you've solidified your business model, you've gained traction, you've got substantial experience now as a franchisor, you've got some sort of authority, then you can consider franchising to expand to other regions and towns more effectively. However, we don't really recommend working backwards from that. We always recommend just start local first, get that traction, establish that reputation first, and then you can start expanding your network by way of franchising. Fiona, did you want to take the next question?
Yes, sure. So we've got someone who's asked, how long and how detailed would you recommend the operations manual be? If you spell everything out, is it wise to give that information to a franchisee early on, as it will give away our trade secrets? Great question. The short answer is the operations manual can be as long and detailed as you want. You just need to be comfortable that it's detailed enough to capture all your core business processes so the franchisee can go to it as a first reference instead of calling you all the time to ask questions. You want to make sure that the structure is, simple and structured as we spoke about. I think you're definitely right in that the operations manual would contain trade secrets. So these types of documents are highly confidential. We usually recommend that you wouldn't share a copy of the operations manual until a franchise agreement is signed, so that the franchisee they would be bound by the confidentiality clauses in that agreement. But if you want to provide that document early, just to get that interest, then we would recommend a non-disclosure agreement, just to make sure, if you are giving over those trade secrets, there is confidentiality obligations. But that's, I guess, the undesirable position. We always suggest signing up first, make sure that they're committed, make sure you've done all the due diligence, and then give over the operations manual. So I think, is there one more question, Ramsha?
Yeah, we've just had a question come through that basically states, I'm paraphrasing here. What happens if there is continued underperformance from franchisees in the network? So I think, we've discussed that in quite a bit of detail in this webinar. However, generally, it's very, very important that first and foremost, when your lawyers are drafting your franchise documents, that there are clear performance metrics that are included in those documents, as well as what would happen if you fail to if the franchisee continuously fails to meet those performance metrics. In franchise agreements that we've reviewed in the past, and we've drafted ourselves, obviously on a very high level, there are things, for example, there's 3 strike rules you may see in certain franchise agreements where it says if a franchisee fails to meet performance metrics 3 times, then so and so would occur. But on a very high level, we highly advise that your franchise documents, namely your franchise agreement, very much stipulates what would happen if your franchisees continue to fail to meet those performance metrics. It can get highly convoluted and complicated if your franchise documents are silent on that, because that can result in disputes just, blowing out of proportion. Whereas if there are clear ways to deal with it in the franchise documents, it is very easy for you, not very easy, but it's, more effective for you as a franchisor to address an issue that arises, in a situation where there's been just continuous underperformance. Whereas if it was silent, that would be a bit more difficult, because your franchisees doesn't know what will happen next, and you also are in a situation where you don't know how it's going to proceed, whether the next steps may trigger and further exacerbate the potential impending dispute. So it's very important that your franchise documents, your franchise agreement, the disclosure documents, the operations manuals, and any other ancillary documents are drafted clearly, concisely, and they really cover situations where they may potentially arise in the relationship between you and the franchisee.
Great, thank you, Ramsha. I think that's all the time we have for today. Once the webinar ends, a survey will pop up, and we would really appreciate it if you could complete the 30-second survey. Please feel free to include your contact details to receive a complimentary consultation to discuss how we can help you with managing your franchise network. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.